Hello everybody, I'm Yuji.
And I'm Muffin.
And welcome back to Fanfic Fridays!
We have got for you a great one.
Oh yes, it is a absolutely beautiful story. This is a Shrek x Erwin Smith story called Accidentally in Love.
Now, don't hear that and automatically shut the video down. I'm telling you, this is great. You're going to want to stay and listen to us read this.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece, guys.
It's beautiful. Don't give it a bad rap just because of its name.
Yes. Reading this will, of course, be Muffin, so I'm going to let her do that.
Erwin wasn't exactly sure how he ended up here. One minute he was commanding his scouting legion in a battle with the Titans, and next he was lost in the woods, unable to see anything past the vast foliage that would indicate where his comrades were. He heaved a sigh, slicking his blonde tresses back as he continued on the lonely road. I walk this lonely road. Anyway, the only road that... I didn't even read that part and realize, I guess, he continued on the lonely road, the only road that he has ever known. It was like a boulevard of broken dreams. What seemed like hours, but was only a few minutes, had passed, and Erwin saw what looked like a small hut built into a gargantuan tree stump in the distance, surrounded by a swamp. He wasn't sure who lived there, if anyone lived there at all, but he would need some shelter for the night before shutting off again tomorrow in search of his scouts. And here was better than nowhere. He approached the hut with caution, making sure that he would not slip into the repugnant muck that was the wetland. There had been a sign which looked to be made from the bark of a tree, and on it was a poorly painted picture of an angered ogre, accompanied by red lettering that read, "Beware, ogre." Were there really ogres here? Once getting close enough to the door, he knocked on it exactly 3 times and waited for a response. There was none. He repeated the 3 knocks and called out, "Hello! I am Erwin Smith, commander of the Scouting Legion. I need some help." Still nothing. He focused his weight on the door, jolting backwards and slamming himself into it with as much force as he could muster. It was no use. That door was unbreakable. Not even an ogre, if such thing existed, could break through that, he decided. Unbeknownst to him, the ogre of the swamp had been behind him, watching his every move as he tried to break into his home. Through a thick Scottish accent came the voice of Shrek. I don't know how to do a Scottish accent. What are you doing? That was terrible. But we're gonna go with it because freaking Muffin doesn't do accents for shit. What are you doing? It sounds more like English. Hang on.
Nope, it's gonna come out British. I know it now.
Hold on. We're taking a YouTube break so I can listen to some Scottish accents and then hopefully get it.
My voice isn't deep enough.
Okay, well, let's just try. Let's just have you as Shrek and we'll see. Okay,
Be a Shrek.
So we're gonna have Yuji as Shrek because I can't do a Scottish accent, and it's.
I'm gonna probably be doing an Irish accent the whole time.
It's funny seeing Yuji try to do a Scottish accent. So
fucking
anyway, through a thick Scottish accent came the voice of Shrek.
What are you doing? Don't know. We're going with that, I guess.
Yeah, we're going with that. He growled angrily. Erwin was taken aback at the sudden presence and quickly turned towards an unfamiliar voice. What he was met with was nothing short of a miracle. His breath hitched in his throat at the magnificent sight before him. Never before had he seen such a tall man. It was almost relieving to know that there were others taller than him and Mike. The ogre's skin was an unsaturated green in color. His big, round eyes were deep brown. The ends of his narrow, cylinder ears bloomed like a newly blossomed flower. Despite the irritated expression etched on the ogre's visage, Erwin could definitely recognize the man as a damnably handsome one. "I apologize. I didn't mean to." The ogre stooped down to height more even Erwin's.
"This is my swamp,"
he said. His hot breath fanned across the commander's face. It smelled of mud, and innards of insects poked out between the small gaps of his yellow teeth. Erwin couldn't deny how much that turned him on. He always enjoyed a man with a lack of personal hygiene. He moved his hips to one side and rested a hand there, a flirtatious grin tempted to the surface. "And who exactly are you?" he asked, his voice containing just a hint of a sultry undertone. Erwin had gone too long without the touch of another, and if this ogre returned any interest, the blonde would undoubtedly jump his bones. Shrek folded his arms over his chest and stood upright once more, looking down at the shorter man with a smirk on his face.
"I'm Shrek, and you're trespassing on my property."
He said,
I don't know.
that sounds more English. But
It's
anyway.
British now.
He looked Erwin up and down before adding,
But I might just be able to overlook that.
"Is that so?"
Depending on whether I like what I hear or not.
Erwin's gaze quickly turned to the ground as he attempted to hide the sudden smile on his face. After quickly recomposing his cool and collected demeanor, he looked back up at Shrek and introduced himself. "I'm Erwin, and I guess you could say, I'm not from around here. There wouldn't happen to be any room in that shack of yours, would there?"
There might be.
Nicely non-specific. Anyhow, I need somewhere to stay for a while until I'm able to continue the search for my scouts. Would here be an option? Shrek contemplated this thought for a moment. Would he really want some strange, albeit attractive, human living with him? Even if it was for a short time, Shrek would be taking one hell of a risk, letting a stranger in his humble home. Ogres weren't exactly liked by the people, but this man, Erwin, maybe he would be different. Besides, even if on the off chance Erwin would turn on him, Shrek was a goddamn giant. There was nothing that could challenge him. He nodded his head, his voice having a subtle, irate voice as he agreed.
All right, you can stay here for 3 days. That's it.
Little did either of them know that this was to be the beginning of a beautiful romance. 2 days had been gone, and neither had lasted long enough for Erwin or Shrek to grasp. The short-lived passion between the two of them was something they didn't want to end. But despite the evident spark that lit up between them, the pair had yet to make any moves. Erwin knew that being in the Scouts was dangerous, and that he could die at any minute. Frankly, he was wondering why he wasn't dead now. So it was wise to take your pleasures where you could. But the last thing the commander would want was to force something like that on Shrek. So he waited for him to make the first move. He stared at the pool of murky liquid at his feet and rid himself of his attire. If he was being honest, Erwin truly loved bathing in that unidentifiable fluid. He didn't know what it was about it, but it was just so soothing to him. If Levi ever found out he'd been bathing in muck for the past 2 days, he'd probably file a restraining order on him.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, he stripped off his clothes from his form and slid carefully into the water. He let his muscles relax as the lukewarm waters lapped over his upper body, inhaling the pungent scent of manure and grass as he did so. As he finally allowed himself to wash away the weighted thoughts of the day, a familiar voice sounded from behind him.
Mind if I join you?
It was Shrek. Erwin could already feel the butterflies building in his gut at the sound of him. I think that's more than, butterflies, if you know what I mean. Anyway, swallowing his pride, he replied, "Sure. Not that Shrek would mind anyway. Even if he refused, that sly beast would most likely still go in. After all, it was his swamp." The two sat there for a moment, the only audible noises being the bugs chirping in the distance. Erwin's crystalline orbs found their way over to the naked hunk of an ogre seated beside him. He couldn't look away. It was like Shrek's body and Erwin's eyes were magnetic. They were just drawn to each other whenever in a close vicinity. Shrek stared back at Erwin, and neither of them dared to make a sound, dared to look away. In that moment, all that mattered to them was each other. The ogre took a calloused finger and ran it over the length of Erwin's arm, sending chills all through his body. Never had Shrek touched him in the 2 days of their living together, but it only left him craving more. Soon his hand trailed up to cup his cheek. Erwin leaned into his touch.
I've been thinking,
murmured Shrek, piquing the renowned scout's interest. Yes?
You don't have to leave tomorrow.
Erwin never thought he'd be as happy as he was right now. All those years of brutal fighting, of sacrifice, of vigilance that seemed to be for naught. All those terrible memories were swept from his mind after Shrek said those words. All those terrible memories were swept from his mind after Shrek said those words.
You could stay here with me, if you want.
Shrek felt himself become flustered, and even here, in the dim light of the torches, was his blush evident. Erwin smiled, a smile that Shrek swore would send him into an early grave, a smile that he would gladly wake up to each and every day, a smile that filled his heart with feelings he never thought himself capable of. Reaching a hand to rest on Shrek's, he spoke, "I would like nothing more than that." Over a month's length of time had passed them by, and to them it only felt like mere seconds. The two lovers had been planning to wed at the year's end. They were happy, truly happy, even with only themselves as company. That was enough. Erwin had been doing his normal bidding that day, taking care of the plant life surrounding the swamp, before he heard the sound of horses approaching his home. Shrek immediately armed himself, only to be urged by his fiancée to let him handle it. "Levi, I didn't expect you here. He half-greeted the corporal, who dismounted his horse and commanded the other scouts to stay put. Erwin, where the fuck have you been? We've been searching for you everywhere. What? His own words were cut short as he got an eyeful of the brutish creature wrapping an arm around Erwin's waist. Levi had never been as mortified as he was right then, and considering he saw the corpses of his own damn squad, that was saying a lot. Levi, you should get out of here. I'm not coming back. What? Why the fuck not? Because, he said, placing a hand on Shrek's shoulder, this is our swamp. The scouts were quickly led away by an equally disturbed and bewildered Levi, and they never returned to the swamp of Erwin Smith and his Shrek again.
The end.
It was beautiful, wasn't it?
Best fanfic ever. 10 out of 10.
Would read again. That
touches the soul,
it
guys.
does.
It's just so beautiful how Shrek and Erwin found each other.
Soulmates. That's what they were, Yuji. Soulmates.
Anyways, that's all for this video, guys. I'm Yuji.
And I'm Muffin.
And we are Constructive Criticism.
See you in the next video.